I'm excited to see what happens here. Please welcome down Steven Fraser from Coming Out Autistic. Thank you, Steven.
Cue the Price is Right theme music.
Steven might have to leave early, so first questions to him. He gets first dibs. We have Garret Zuercher from this film that we just saw. Thank you very much. And we also have Steve Way here, who stars in the first film you saw, Act of God. Over to you.
Oh my goodness, what a joy, what a joy. Welcome, everybody. I just want you to give yourselves a big round of applause for being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh my goodness. As Isaac has given us a wonderful introduction, my name is Janey. I am from Vimeo. I'd like to introduce my colleague, who can introduce herself.
Yes, hi, my name is Kate. I am also from Vimeo, and we're happy to sponsor this event.
Yeah, we co-lead accessibility efforts here at Vimeo, and that's enough about us. I think you're pretty bored with our introduction anyway. So we really just want to get into our wonderful, lovely panelists here today. Since we do not have a lot of time with Steven today, let's break the ice, why don't we? I see a lot of you are readily inspired by superheroes and comic books. Would I be right about that? Could you tell us if you draw any inspirations from a particular superhero or comic book?
Yes, I do. Well, I like to draw. That's why I do animation, but I also make comics as well. And I think a lot of my stories are personal. So for like comics, I like people like Alison Bechdel, who did Phone Home, and people like Joe Sacco as well, who do kind of like personal stories that are quite important. So I quite like that. Like I do like diary comics as well and things like that. So that always draws into my work. So yeah.
And you, Garrett?
Yes, for myself, I derive inspiration from several different layers of comic books. For example, comics are inherently visual. So for me as a deaf person, I get really bored with a big screen with tiny little subtitles on the bottom, and it's the same format all the time. I would love to see more caption access that is integrated directly into the film. And of course, the best model for that is comic books that have that integration. People always say, oh, you love comic books, huh? I love the visual style of comic books. I also derive inspiration from, and one reason why I wrote this film, in fact, is the book that was in the movie, The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, is one of my favorite books. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. It is a brilliant book. Many times I see other people on the subway reading that book, and I want so badly to talk about the book with them. I love that book. What's your favorite part? But I don't, because I don't know how I could interact with them. And that's where the inspiration for the film comes from. Mm-hmm. That should I write? Should I try to speak? Will they think I'm crazy if I walk up to them? And all of that is what inspired this film for me.
Great. So, Steven, how did you also go from doing comics to getting into animation? And what kind of process do you use?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my the animated films I make are documentaries. So, for example, with Coming Out Autistic, I'm autistic, and I also identify as bisexual, and I know a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum who are also LGBT+. So I was having lots of conversations with these people, and we were saying, felt that there was like a coming out of being LGBT+, but there's also coming out as being autistic. So I just kind of drew parallels between these two stories, and the idea initially started out as a comic. So I did interviews with people who I knew, and I made like a little comic, and then I felt that there was more to the story. So I felt that the images needed to move, and the stories needed to be, a bit more visual, but also I think that people needed a voice. So that's really where the film came about. And because it's animation, it takes forever. So it's only like a 4-minute film. So so I took some of the interviews and just kind of condensed them. And so, yeah, so that's really how the project came about. And, you know, I animated it during lockdown, so it gave me a bit more time.
So we've known zine culture, which is basically, for those who don't know, when you create a zine, it's creating a way to communicate a magazine or like a digital novel or like a graphic novel for people who would be able to kind of get stories or bite-sized articles or pieces of information onto like a artistic editorial. I kind of want to highlight, of course.
Sorry, can I clarify one quick
please.
thing? If you are not familiar with the book Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, the story is about comic books.
Yes.
That's helpful to know.
Yes, emphatic yes. So the question from here really lies into, could you say a word possibly how important zine culture and how this kind of navigates into like the LGBTQ sphere and what this could mean for members of our community to be able to incorporate themselves into it?
Yeah, so zines also tend to be like self-published, so it's people kind of telling their own stories and just using like printers or photocopy machines to print out either it could be like their poetry or their comics or their prose. And because they're kind of like DIY, it's people taking, you know, like their own stories, it can kind of attract people who don't tend to be published with major publishers. So that could be LGBT plus people, because a lot of those people get ignored, as well as autistic people or disabled people. So that sort of culture and that kind of do-it-yourself attitude, they really attract different people, and I find that quite exciting. And I feel that I'm part of that culture as well. And yeah, so I just love like reading zines and self-published comics because I feel more connected to the person that made it as well. And yeah, so that whole culture, I find it really interesting. And sometimes I'd much rather read somebody's little self-published booklet rather than reading like a novel that I've bought in a store, just because I just feel more connected to the person who created it. And yeah, I feel those stories kind of feel a bit more personal and yeah, they're more personal to me, and yeah, I just love it.
So these are all very personal stories and also independent films. So I'm curious what Steve in particular, I think this question is for you. I would like to know from all of you really, but what are the
Extra hurdles.
Yeah, extra hurdles that you face when making films. And that could be anything. It could be the budget and getting crew together, but also just in general, the day-to-day work.
Yeah, it's definitely every aspect of making a film from start to finish. As you said, with the budget, you know, it's hard to get funding as it is. It's even harder when people look at you and they don't even think that you're capable of speaking, let alone acting. When you shoot, you have to find accessible locations, which is hard to do in everyday life. Post-production, you have to find people who are willing to work with you, who are willing to communicate with you, you know, who share the vision that you have. And again, it's all about finding accessible spaces. You know, I'm so grateful for ReelAbilities because at the end of the day, it is a safe space. You know, it's something that we can call our own, where we're finally given the platform to show that we are good enough, if not better than everyone else. And it's, yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you know, think about how many performers, how many directors that are disabled that we've seen on the screen today. And if it wasn't for this film festival, we wouldn't know who they are. You know, the other film festivals, they're not going to give us the time of day. You know, I said in the panel I did earlier this afternoon, you know, we all felt a special connection to the documentary Trip Camp, and we lost to an octopus. If that doesn't tell you how the people in power view us, I don't know what else you need. But ReelAbilities is just the start. And this is how we're able to finally showcase our talents, our visions, our ideas. So eventually people in power can see, oh, they are good enough.
I just want to let that sit for a second. To reiterate and to echo, just to have the power to know that we are good enough. That just really resonates. I mean, to change the mood instantly, we're going to take some questions from the audience. So if anybody has a burning question that you would like to ask our wonderful panel here, we are going to pass around some microphones and bring it to you. So step on up, don't be shy. Got a lovely question from our friend in the red shirt. Hi.
What inspired you to create these amazing shorts?
Do you want to just go down the line?
Steven, you want to go first because you got to run.
Oh, yeah, I'll just go. Yes, I was inspired with conversations I was having with other LGBT people who are autistic. And and I just felt the need to tell the story and to give people a voice from my community as well. So it was, just conversations with friends and also just people that I'd met just over the years who felt that we had a story about, being LGBT plus and autistic, and that there was, something to say about it. So that was my main inspiration.
I'm sorry to
And I'm gonna
interrupt.
have to go.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank
Steven
you,
Fraser.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Steven. Yes.
Running to another screening downtown, to be clear. He's not just going out on a date.
Okay.
I mean, what date could be hotter than this film festival? But
For me, as I mentioned, my inspiration comes from, I mentioned a little bit where my inspiration comes from, but it also helps that I've been acting for 20 years. I am a deaf actor, and I swear every time I show up on set, every time I get a script or a side, which is, a piece of a script for an audition, I don't see myself reflected in these characters. I don't see myself in this situation. I don't see myself in the world of this piece, and none of my deaf friends do either. This says deaf character, but I don't know any deaf people who do this. So, and you want to know a secret? 99% or more of these characters are written by hearing people, and that's why.
wow.
I mean, why? We need authentic writing. We need people who are writing from a firsthand experience, people who have lived these experiences, the experience of being deaf. We know how to live as a deaf person, and these opportunities need to be provided to people who can write from their own lived experience. So I said, I'm going to write what I know, and I am going to make a film of what I know, and show the industry what my life actually looks like, what my friends' lives actually look like. So I'm trying to bring just a little authenticity to the big screen.
And to go off that real quick,
I also want to shout out my producer, Dana, who's here in the front row.
Okay.
She is the reason I was able to make this film.
And Steve?
Yeah, just to go off that real quick. I'm not a creator here. I'm not going to speak for my boy Spencer, who made that wonderful film. But just to talk about the importance of writing. As many as you know, we are currently in a writer's strike. So solidarity with my fellow WGA brothers and sisters on our first day of striking today. I'm sorry your favorite shows are going to go away for a while. But this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting for better rooms, better representation. Because there's absolutely no reason why a person who can hear writes a story of someone who cannot hear. There's no reason why someone who can walk should write my story. And this is one of the reasons why we are currently on strike, and I think it's just, again, it's so important to have that representation because it just makes it that much better. And you know when it's fake. Yeah. And this ain't fake.
Hello. Thank you for being here. My question is about the term disability porn, and if people don't know what that is, it's finding people who don't have disabilities finding inspiration in people that have disabilities by kind of putting them lower. Do you mind talking a bit about disability porn and how people might overlook the extreme technique and dedication in the craft that both of you do so phenomenally?
Yeah, thank you for that. To me, I prefer the term inspiration porn. I think disabled porn is a whole totally different other thing. If you want to check that out. Not here. But, yeah, it's a thing, people. It's real. If the short answer, if you don't know what inspiration porn is, it's basically, think of it the last segment of the evening news, where you hear a story about a kid who sells lemonade to raise money to buy his friend a wheelchair. Right, and after the rest of the newscast about wars and disease and people being shot, it's meant to use disabled people to make you feel good. Right, it's supposed to make you feel better. When I hear that doesn't make me feel good. It makes me want to murder every healthcare CEO for not giving a wheelchair to a child, and it's real. Right? It's like, oh, the girl with Down syndrome went to prom with the quarterback. I went to prom. It sucked. It's not a story. But you know what is a story? And I go back to it, this film festival. Right? That's the real inspiration. And I don't mean, oh, look at that, disabled people are doing stuff. No, it's disabled people are making beautiful work. We're making beautiful art. And that's to me the real inspiration. And there's nothing wrong, thank you. There's nothing wrong with inspiring people. Right? I'm inspired every day. I was inspired by those films. But there is a difference between being inspired by people doing everyday things and inspired by people making art. And that's why this should be on the evening news.
I mean, I can't say it better than that, Steve. But to your point, you're right. The difference is the lens. If the lens comes from a person, a creator, an artist who has a disability themselves, that is an authentic lens. If the lens comes from someone who wants to tell a story of a person with a disability, but they have no experience of that disability, why would you want to tell that story? That's not your story to tell. I feel that they want to tell those kinds of stories because it makes them feel good, or they think that it will make their audiences feel good. And that is where I have a problem as well.
I think both of you have been doing a lot in terms of representation, like in advocating and helping others advocate. You have Deaf Broadway. And Steve, you've been speaking for years. And you're represented in Hulu. You're in a really successful show, which is awesome. I just want to acknowledge that. I don't know what else to say.
We have one more question down
Okay.
here, and I want to give a big thank you to Christine Bruno and Simi Linton, who have been two of the people who have taught ReelAbilities never to use the word special and never to use the word inspiration out of place, and to only use it where it goes. So, last question to Christine.
Thank you, Isaac. Gorgeous films, all of them, but especially Garrett and Steve. I'm so glad to see you both up here. My question is primarily for you, Garrett, my dear friend. God, the visuals in your film were so stunning. Can you talk about how, because speaking of lens, you have such a particular eye, and can you talk about the communication with your cinematographer, and how those visuals? I mean, the eye for color, the eye for the visual landscape of New York, and where is that coffee shop? Because I want to go there and find my Mr. Right too.
First of all, that coffee shop is real. It's in Long Island City. And I encourage you to go check it out. It's beautiful, as you can see. It's right off Queensboro stop. It's called The Beast next door in Long Island City. It's gorgeous. And we were so lucky to get 3 full filming days there. But to your question, Christine, I would say you're speaking, as you mentioned, visuals. Of course, I'm a deaf person, so I am 100% deaf. It means I hear nothing. My art is fully visual, 100% visual. I write with my eye. I also have my MFA in playwriting. I just graduated last year, and 2 of my cohort, thank you, and 2 of my cohort members are here today. And they will tell you my stage directions for the stage are very cinematic, right? So I write a very vivid visual because I think that way. My thesis play, in my thesis play, my stage direction said hurricane. I want a hurricane on the stage. You can't get more visual than that. As a deaf artist, I am 100% visual as it's just my nature. And I think it just comes with the territory.
Can I just tack on to that? I was so impressed by I'm a former script supervisor, so your continuity was brilliant.
I want to say all of these films, the quality is so unbelievable. You do not need to compromise and think that, this is a disability film. We're going to lower. This is what everyone can do, and it is beautiful. I want to thank you both so much for being here. I want to thank our moderators for moderating this conversation. Thank you all for joining us. There's much more to say. We have one more film here tonight. Please join us. It's going to be starting any moment now. We're over time, of course. But The Quiet Epidemic will be in here in just 2 minutes. Thank you very much.